Chivalry of a Failed Knight did not get a second season, but did you know the anime only covered 3 of the 20-ish books? So each of my videos will summarize a single volume, alongside the use of clip art style animations. Now some of the characters didn't appear in the anime, so for them I'll use a similar character from a different show to represent them. Many years prior, there was a group of homeless kids living in a shed outside of a church. A redhead named Yuri gives the 2 younger boys alcohol as a makeshift test to see if they're ready to become adults. A nun steps outside, scolding Yuri for her actions, and you see a familiar face in the background. You see, Alice and Yuri vowed to protect these kids, which is why she's currently working for the Mafia. Presently, Hagan Academy is empty due to it being summer break, though our main group is at a rival school, training for the upcoming 7 Stars Sword Art Festival. Stella's flames surround her foe, however the lightning-infused sword keeps them at bay. Toka is here just as a coach and prepares her ultimate attack, forcing Stella to back away, conjuring a flaming dragon. Toka slays it with Raikiri. Stella lunges forward, but Toka uses the momentum from her quick draw to spin completely around, catching Stella by surprise. Due to the phantom form blade, Stella is left unharmed, simply stating that she didn't know that was possible. Toka declares this to be her first time attempting it, as she advises Stella to be more careful in her upcoming battles. Kagami and Alice were watching this amazing match, alongside 2 other journalists. Yagakoro asks why Alice isn't training, and she claims to just be uninterested. Alice then flirts with Komiyama, causing him to back away, unsure how to respond. Next, they discuss Ikki's triumph over Raikiri, and they observe as he effortlessly wins the 2 versus 1 against a duo of Hagan's representatives. Kagami then explains that Ikki already beat every coach at this facility, so they were forced to call in someone even stronger to train him. They'd normally assume this to be Saikyo or Director Kurono, however they're both out of town. Yagakoro states that Hagan is bringing a strong team this year, and everyone agrees that there is an abnormal amount of unknown first years attending this upcoming 7 Stars. On top of this, the rank A blazer Oma Kuragane will be in attendance, which is in fact Ikki's older brother. A professional blazer nicknamed the God of War then enters the facility. Later that evening, you find Ikki taking a jog, accompanied by Stella, who's very frustrated after losing to Raikiri. Stella then brings up Oma Kuragane, curious as to why this rank A blazer isn't more famous. Ikki explains that his brother discarded their family and went into hiding because according to him, there was no worthy opponents. This means that Oma's resurfacing is due to Stella joining Hagan Academy, and after hearing all of this, Stella vows to surpass Toka by the end of this week. Now, while walking through town holding hands, our couple garners quite a bit of attention. Ikki's acting much bolder with their relationship, so Stella rewards him by pulling his arm even closer to her body. Though a moment later, he's distracted by a passerby, who he thinks is hiding a knife. Ikki bolts into action just as the man begins to pull out the weapon, though just before he can, a girl grabs hold of his arm. She seems to know this man's past, but she's knocked down as the man attacks her. Ikki suddenly realizes this would-be girl is actually a boy, who's also a 7-star rep from a different school. With a scream for help, Ikki kicks a lipstick container, disarming the man, followed by a single punch knocking him out. Stella calls the police as the boy introduces himself as Amane Shinomiya, and a very energetic Ikki fanboy. Amane then treats them to a meal where you learn that he's apparently really weak, but was picked to be a 7-star rep due to his rare ability. Amane genuinely thanks Ikki for the save, and even asks for an autograph. He then begins quoting Ikki's most embarrassing moments as Stella struggles to hold back the laughter. A moment later, Amane stands up to leave, so Ikki goes to thank him, but is overwhelmed by a sense of unease. To try and alleviate this issue, he calls Kagami asking about Amane. The only information she has is that his ability somehow manipulates cause and effect, though now she's become interested. Stella tells him he's just overthinking this, but Ikki is still unsure. Jumping back in time, you see Alice walking home with Yuri. They discuss that the Olympics is coming to town, so the government is doing whatever it can to chase away any and all street kids. You then watch as an old man orders a subordinate to use trash to clean up other trash. Back to the present, you find Kagami researching Amane. She discovers that all 6 of his wins were by default, and she also notices that each school is sending one unknown student as a 7-star representative. After investigating their past, she concludes that there must be an 8th school hiding within the others, and at that moment she's run through by Alice's phantom form dagger. An annoyed Alice then answers the phone to Hiraga, asking why she took so long to pick up. She explains that Kagami uncovered Akatsuki Academy and asks if she needs to be killed. Hiraga doesn't think that's necessary and hands the phone to a one-armed man named Master Wallenstein. He asks if Alice is prepared. She says yes, followed by him declaring Alice, aka the Black Assassin, to be his very best pupil. So after dealing with Kagami, Alice returns home to find Shizuku reading a book. She comments about Alice being out awfully late, and Alice invites her to have a shot. Shizuku agrees since today is special, and downs this disgusting drink. Alice talks about how she began drinking whiskey as a child, explaining that now it tastes like memories. She then asks why today is special, so Shizuku explains that today is the very first time Alice has asked her for anything. Alice then thinks back to the time she returned home to find the door off its hinges and a pool of blood on the ground. Sprinting after the trail, Alice finds Yuri bleeding out in the street as numerous citizens walk by, ignoring the dirty street kids. Yuri asks Alice to go save the others, just as her last breath slips away. Alice wastes no time tracking them down, demanding to know why the Mafia attacked her family. They explain the mayor of the city paid them to take out the trash, and that in this world, it's simply survival of the fittest. You know, they're right. And a moment later, Alice is drenched in their blood. With her family saved, she reaches out to them, but now they're completely terrified. With nowhere to go, Alice walks through the street as a stranger approaches her. He claims to be an assassin, explaining that Alice stole his kill. He then delivers Alice the head of the mayor, which she repeatedly stomps into the ground. He invites her to join the terrorist group known as Rebellion, explaining that strength is all that matters in this world. Alice threatens to decline, and this man threatens to take her by force. Alice demands $100 million. He threatens to decline, and is met by a stare of pure bloodlust. Master Wallenstein is not intimidated in the slightest, but he agrees to the $100 million and welcomes Alice to her new home. Our group is on a bus returning to Hagun, where Stella is eating away her frustration of tying Toka 3 to 3. The twins warn her she'll get fat, but she explains it all just goes to her chest. In a fit of rage, the twins wrestle Stella to the ground, scouring every inch of her body for hidden fat rolls. Shizuku takes this opportunity to offer her brother a snack, while holding it between her lips. Stella effortlessly breaks away, asking what the heck Shizuku's doing.
Harassing him.
The bus lurches to a halt, and everyone gazes at the distant billows of smoke rising from Hagun Academy. Moments later, they arrive and exit the bus to be greeted by a jester. Toka asks if they caused this, prompting the group to drop to the ground, declaring themselves to be Akatsuki Academy. Ikki asks Oma what's going on, but he exclaims,
"I'm not your family."
Hiraga explains they're here to destroy Hagun Academy as a way to prove their power and earn an official spot at the 7-Star Sword Art Festival. Toka doesn't think criminals would be allowed to participate, but Hiraga thinks the Mage Knight Federation would be forced to prove who's stronger. Each side then readies their devices. Back at the training facility, you see the man known as the God of War. He's thinking back on his 3 matches with Ikki, where neither of them made a move, because neither of them gave an opening. He then notices something strange, and opens a locked room to find Kagami hogtied. Literally seconds earlier, Alice released her daggers, aiming at all of their shadows, pinning all of the Akatsuki members in place. You see, back on the bus, Alice had restrained Ikki's group and revealed the existence of her terrorist group known as Rebellion, and of course, Akatsuki Academy. Everyone was very reluctant to cooperate with her, but Shizuku's gaze convinced Ikki to trust in Alice. Now unable to move, Akatsuki is swiftly cut down, though Ikki struggles to believe he beat Oma this easily. Then upon remembering the incident with Amane, Ikki turns around to watch Alice get impaled. She passes out due to the phantom form blades as Shizuku runs toward her friend, though she's blasted backwards as Akatsuki steps out from behind an illusion. Upon looking down again, they realize they'd attacked wooden dolls, and Sarah Bloodlily asked if they're impressed with her artwork. Hiraga admits that Amane's ability predicted Alice's betrayal, just before running away with their unconscious friend. Ikki chases, but Oma gets in the way, so Stella steps up confronting him. She states that Shizuku is following Hiraga, and that it's probably a trap, so Ikki dashes off to help his sister. Stella challenges Oma and sends him flying before unleashing her trump card. Oma unleashes his full power as well, creating monstrous shockwaves as these giant elemental blades collide. Everyone is forced to just watch as Stella's sword begins to wane, as she struggles to comprehend this overwhelming power. Her salamandra snaps, allowing the tornado to descend upon her. Toka manages to whisk her out of harm's way, then immediately knocks her out, throwing her body to the twins. She orders all of the 7-star reps to flee, but Kanata refuses to leave Toka's side. The full power of Akatsuki then descends upon Hagun's student council. Now, Shizuku is able to track down Alice using her magic, however she's already run out of breath. To fix this problem, she relieves somebody of their motorcycle, but realizes her legs are too short to ride it. Ikki arrives, prompting Shizuku to complain about this bike's major design flaw. He proclaims her to be heading straight into a trap that Alice wouldn't want her getting involved with. Shizuku is well aware, but simply doesn't care because her best friend is in danger. Ikki nods in approval before riding tandem with Shizuku. 10 minutes have passed since this battle began, and Toka is the last person standing. Oma refuses to fight back unless she can hurt him, so she repeatedly releases Raikiri, but just can't pierce his magical defense. So since he's not moving, she takes the time creating a lightning-fueled railgun, inserting herself as the projectile. Her blade bolts towards Oma, blood explodes from her arm, and she just barely nicks his chest. The Gale Sword Emperor graciously acknowledges her feat by counterattacking with Kusanagi. With the student council incapacitated, Akatsuki begins to go after Stella and the twins, purposely allowing Ikki and Shizuku to reach their headquarters. Over in Osaka, Saikyo and Kurono receive word of the attack, but all flights have been delayed. Using their magic, they begin running back to Hagun, but stop in their tracks due to an overwhelmingly powerful aura. Ikki feels this aura as well, and brings the bike to a screeching halt. They look up to see a dual-wielding Valkyrie, as Ikki orders Shizuku to go on without him. You find out this woman is Edelweiss, the Twin Wings, the strongest sword fighter in the world. She's also a criminal so powerful that governments don't even attempt to apprehend her. Alice wakes up with Master Wallenstein's boot deep in her gut, explaining that he was genuinely hoping for Amane's prediction to be wrong. He exclaims that he taught Alice to forsake love, causing her to think back on the last time she returned home. It was the time that Alice handed over the large sum of money, explaining that she's become an assassin. Though instead of being happy, the nun somberly handed Alice a bottle of liquor, asking her to always remember her and Yuri's promise to protect the weak. Alice breaks free attacking, but is immediately knocked back to the ground, just as a bowl of ice crashes through the ceiling. Alice screams, "You were supposed to leave me!" But Shizuku never agreed to that. Alice's organs rupture, and the pain takes away her ability to speak, and to tell Shizuku that water is useless against Wallenstein. She drops a massive ice hammer directly on top of him, but somehow it seems to miss. She quickly freezes the floor and launches a volley of razor-sharp icicles, yet Wallenstein walks toward her, completely unaffected. Shizuku erects a massive ice pillar in defense, just as Alice forces out a scream. "Dodge!" Ikki opens the battle with his trump card, even turning off his breathing to help improve his reactions. Using his fastest technique, he's just barely able to parry her invisible perfect attacks. Ikki creates some distance and throws out an afterimage, which Edelweiss falls for. Ikki takes this opportunity to attack, but nearly loses his head in the process. He then charges forward with his most powerful attack, but she skillfully stops the charge using the tip of her blade. She successfully slashes his forehead, causing blood to cover her eyes, though he's still able to block using his perfect vision. With all of his options exhausted, Ikki locks blades and twists his muscles in such a way to send a shockwave through his foe. Though blood burst from his own body, as Edelweiss did the same thing, just much stronger. Her next blow shatters Ikki's sword as his consciousness begins to slip away. He wills his feet underneath him, gripping a shard of his former device. She actually doesn't wish to kill him and even wants to go save Shizuku from Wallenstein, but Ikki refuses to let her through, because this is the first time his sister has ever needed him. The world's strongest sword fighter then apologizes and steels herself to respectfully finish off the warrior standing in front of her. Shizuku emerges from the fog, freezing the wound where her arm used to be. She decides the best course of action is to grab Alice and flee, but she slips and falls on her own ice. She finally realizes that Wallenstein holds the power to control friction, and that without friction, even the sharpest bullet will simply bounce off. Alice then screams as Shizuku's body is cleaved into two separate pieces. Edelweiss is standing there shocked that Ikki chose to attack with the last of his strength, which actually forced her to hold back in order to defend herself. Director Kurino then arrives, and Edelweiss straight up admits that she meant to kill Ikki with that final attack. She thinks about how Amane will be Ikki's toughest opponent, before asking Kureno to pass on the following message.
I hope you're stronger next time.
After she leaves, Kureno rushes to heal Ikki and notices a few drops of blood right where Edelweiss was standing. She then senses some very strange magic happening down below. Shizuku looks up at Alice, but for some reason can't make out the words. She then remembers what happened, considers how sad her friends would be.
Screw it, might as well try.
Changing perspectives, Alice's entire world seems to be fading away, even to the point that Shizuku's corpse begins to feel weightless. She looks down, but sees nothing but a pile of clothes. Wallenstein is confused as Shizuku appears across the room, completely bare. He realizes that she vaporized her own flesh, and declares that one mistake reconstructing herself could be catastrophic. Shizuku calls herself a genius, and giggles as she's now completely immune to his attacks. Wallenstein then begins gasping for air as his lungs begin filling with water. Shizuku states that she would never use this technique on another student, all the while Wallenstein begs for mercy. Icicles then burst out from within his body, and Shizuku relieves this corpse of its cloak. She uses up the last of her magic, successfully piecing herself back together, and then scolds her best friend for attempting to run away. Elsewhere, Miss Saikyo stands before Akatsuki, defending Stella and the twins. She's winning a battle with Oma, and you realize they seem to know each other somehow. Her gravity magic renders the rest of Akatsuki immobile, just before Hiraga arrives, ordering them to retreat. After all is said and done, Akatsuki Academy is banned from competing in the 7-Star Sword Art Festival. That is until the Prime Minister of Japan openly admits to backing this new school. This causes the International Mage Knight Federation to give the order for the official Japanese branches to crush Akatsuki at the tournament in order to prove that they are stronger. Kureno apologizes to Ikki and Shizuku before explaining that the Prime Minister, who used to be her director, wants to train Japanese blazers without the Mage Knight Federation being involved. Shizuku exclaims they're terrorists, but sadly they have no evidence. Kureno then gives Ikki the opportunity to back out of the 7 stars, but obviously he refuses. They ask about Stella to find out she's still planning to attend, but will be gone for the next week. Alice, the twins, and Kaneda all backed out for different reasons, but Alice volunteered to give her spot to Shizuku. She immediately accepts, as Kureno points out that Shizuku was the only person to win against Akatsuki. Ikki then learns that his first opponent is slated to be the previous year's winner, King Yudai Moribashi. Around the same time, Stella was asking Miss Saikyo to personally train her. The demon princess threatens to decline, prompting Stella to ready her weapon anyway. Miss Saikyo then admits that she has nothing to teach Stella, but she's more than willing to non-stop kick the shit out of her for the next 7 days. Stella eagerly accepts this week of hell, seeking to find any way she can to conquer a more powerful foe. The 7-Star Sword Art Festival will commence in 2 days' time, which has caused this quiet coastal town to be overrun by spectators. Ikki is currently getting dressed when Shizuku knocks on the door. With his shirt still undone, he lets her inside, where she immediately freezes up. Ikki compliments her outfit, causing blood to gush out of her nose. Ikki rushes to help, but Alice orders him to cover up his abs. With the crisis averted, Alice takes their photo, and you find out that Toka and Utakata are still unconscious from their battle against Akatsuki. Now, Alice doesn't expect the criminals to attend tonight's banquet, but she urges them to still be careful. Stella is still training with Miss Saikyo as this lowly F-rank knight enters into the party, immediately becoming the center of attention. Ikki revels in the fact that his dream is finally becoming reality, but he snaps back as Shizuku spots a member of Akatsuki. It's Sarah Bloodlily, aka Bloody Da Vinci, who beelines straight for Ikki, where she begins aggressively feeling up his body. He doesn't sense any bloodlust, so he allows her to continue, that is until she rips open his shirt. Sarah exclaims that he's perfect, stating that it was love at first sight. She demands he poses nude for a painting, but of course he refuses. She threatens to forcefully rip off the rest of his clothes, and Shizuku flying drop kicks her across the room. Ikki holds back his sister as a second member of Akatsuki cuts in, explaining that Sarah's body is extremely fragile, hence the nickname Bloody Da Vinci. Kazamatsuri then offers Ikki a job as her butler, just before exiting the banquet. A third member of Akatsuki then enters into the situation, openly admitting to being an assassin. Shizuku is shocked she'd say that, but Tatara doesn't have to worry because the Prime Minister is covering it up. To make amends, she hands Shizuku a plate of food, which Ikki knocks to the floor, noticing it contained a poisoned razor blade. Ikki and Totara both materialize their devices, but are interrupted by the 7-star king, Yudai Moribashi. He's flanked by the first and second runners-up, and the king dares Totara to take one more step forward. Kaga, Panzer Grizzly, comments about the newcomers being awfully feisty this year, before gulping down the poisoned food and blade without even flinching. At this, Totara begins losing her nerve, and she's suddenly caressed by a woman in a lab coat, stating that Totara needs to improve her diet. This doctor prescribes her some pills. She tries dropping them, but she's unable to move her arms. Shizuku recognizes this to be the Medico Knight Kiriko Yakushi, the best doctor in all of Japan. Ikki wonders how she just appeared like that, causing Shizuku to explain it to be a similar technique as her Aoi Rine. Totara is then harassed by the Sword Eater, before finally fleeing the banquet. Ikki promptly thanks everyone for backing him up, and Moribashi states that he'd lose his cool as well if someone threatened his little sister. Ikki then mentions that he's glad Akatsuki Academy is participating this year, as they're sure to be uniquely powerful opponents. The 7-star king couldn't agree more, and he then invites Ikki and Shizuku to have dinner with him tomorrow. In the next room over, director Kurano asks why the Prime Minister is choosing to support Akatsuki Academy. He gives a surface-level answer, followed by her revealing that the Prime Minister is attempting to sever all ties with the Mage Knight Federation. Tsukikage admits that he's trying to break out of the alliance, as he's tired of fighting wars that have nothing to do with Japan. Kurano states that as a small island, Japan needs allies. However, Tsukikage believes they're strong enough to fend for themselves. The following day, our group heads downstairs, where they meet up with Moribashi. Ikki introduces Alice, who immediately begins flirting. The king is caught off guard, followed by them discussing Stella's absence, just before Moribashi leads the way through town. It turns out Moribashi was born here, and as such is seen as the town hero. Shizuku even points out that he's drawing more attention than Stella, and she's literally royalty. Ikki explains that it's all due to the tragic incident that had once ended Moribashi's career. He, however, made an impossible recovery, so now everyone sees him as the star of the town. Ikki then notices a presence following him, but they just arrive to the restaurant. They immediately realize this to be owned by Moribashi's family, and they enter inside to a packed dining room. Moribashi's sister is shocked to see her brother's round 1 opponent, as she holds up a notebook greeting them. They learn that Komei's mute, though it's due to a mental problem rather than a physical ailment. They're then shown to their seats just as Moribashi apologizes to step away to help with the restaurant. This table just so happens to be beside Kiriko and Yagakoro, who are discussing Moribashi. Kiriko turns out to be the doctor who healed his injuries, and she came here today for a routine checkup. You see, Yagakoro thought they were in a relationship, causing Kiriko to state that she prefers younger men, much like Kuragane. She even offers Ikki a free pre-match physical, which Shizuku doesn't take kindly to. The food arrives, which is unanimously determined to be delicious. Moribashi gladly says the bill's on him. Ikki tries to decline, so the king declares that Ikki can pay him back with a good fight tomorrow. Ikki promises to return the favor by being the best opponent Moribashi has ever faced. Now joined by their new acquaintances, they head for the train station where you learn that Kiriko can read and control people's bodies by manipulating the blood within them. Yagakoro then brings up a rumor that Ikki actually won a fight against Edelweiss the Twin Wings. He reveals that he lost. She wants to know the details, but he honestly only remembers waking up in the hospital. Then upon arriving to the train station, Ikki chooses to say goodbye, as he's planning to take a detour. Alice offers to join him, but is immediately turned away. Though once he's gone, Kiriko expresses that it's such a shame that Ikki is going to lose tomorrow. Shizuku asks why, so she reveals that Moribashi's desire to win is just leagues above Ikki's. After entering into a park, Ikki calls out to his pursuer, which is revealed to be his rank A brother. Oma Kuragane orders Ikki to drop out of the 7 stars, asserting that Ikki is holding back Stella's potential. This makes Ikki realize that Oma only cares about raw magic power, and he declares that even if he's weak, Stella still loves him. Oma attacks with wind strikes as Ikki ducks underneath them. They lock blades, Ikki leaps backwards as Oma's slash tears open the ground. Ikki asks what Oma did to change his body, but instead of answering, he conjures a violent windstorm. This technique removes all oxygen from the area, leaving Ikki with no choice but to end this with Ito Shura. Charging at his brother, Ikki prepares to dodge the incoming slash, but his body freezes up, leaving him with no choice but to block. He's launched backwards, slamming into a wall, shattering both of his arms. Oma states that Edelweiss apparently left Ikki a parting gift, as he prepares to end this fail rank blazer. Now Ikki is still unable to move and can only watch as his death approaches. Take a bite, Tiger King! Kusanagi is neutralized as Moribashi now stands between them. He came to return Ikki's forgotten handbook and wonders why two brothers are trying to kill each other. Oma leaves, so Moribashi asks why Ikki froze up, but instead of answering, he tries his best to remember his battle with the twin wings. After getting healed, Ikki returns to his room, where he spends all night contemplating what could be wrong with him. Let the 62nd 7 Stars Battle Festival begin! Toka wakes up in the hospital to find Kanata by her side and Utakata still asleep. The TV announcers state that Stella is late to her match, and that her opponent, Icy Sneer, is asking to have her disqualified. Toka asks why Stella isn't there, and Kanata explains that last she knew, Stella was training with Miss Saikyo. Then after confirming that Stella's train was delayed, the 7-star committee chooses to postpone her match until later. Kanata then mentions that Ikki's first match will be against King Yudai Moribashi, and Toka gives Ikki a 40% chance of winning. It's the fact that Moribashi specializes in nullifying magic that actually works to Ikki's advantage. Now, at the 7 Stars, our group is spectating from the stands when Ikki is called to the waiting room. Shizuku is complaining about Stella when Kiriko arrives, stating that Ikki is way too calm for a warrior. It's almost as if he's forcing himself to relax. Now jumping back in time to the night before, we resume with Shizuku demanding to know why Moribashi is stronger than her brother. A few years ago, Moribashi's family was headed to the park when they wound up in a train crash. Moribashi lost both of his legs that day, and his little sister Kome blamed herself and refused to ever speak again. Only 6 months went by before Moribashi came crawling to Kiriko, wanting her to give him the ability to walk again. She did so by pulling cells from all over his body in order to create a fresh pair of legs. This process was successful, but severely weakened his muscles and bones, which resulted in daily fractures and tears during the months of intense rehabilitation. 3 months into this hellish recovery, Kiriko even begged Moribashi to let her reverse the process, because his screams of pain were even beginning to seep into her nightmares. He, however, refused to quit, because the last words his little sister ever spoke to him were,
"I'm so sorry."
Present Shizuku then notices Kome sitting in the stands across from her. If you're enjoying this video, then be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next. Moribashi is aware that Kome feels responsible for the accident, which is exactly why he must prove to her that he's stronger now than he was before.
That last match was rather disappointing, since it was won due to an out-of-ring violation.
Agreed, but the king just entered the arena and I mean listen to that crowd.
Bashi! Bashi! Bashi!
You know, I underwent limb regeneration surgery myself, but I gave up after 3 days of excruciating pain.
And to think King Moribashi successfully endured that hell. Anyways, another one just entered the arena.
Shizuku then asked Kiriko to examine Ikki a second time, and she's glad to report that he's now in perfect fighting condition. The match begins, and Ikki sprints toward his foe, though he pauses due to the sheer presence of the king. Ikki dashes in anyways, but is immediately pushed away by the spear.
Wow, that one powerful attack was enough to drive Kyriogane back.
Actually, that one attack was 3 unbelievably quick thrusts.
Ikki approaches once again, this time casually stepping into the spear's range. Moribashi unleashes his attacks, which Ikki beautifully dodges. The king steps away, asking if the warm-up is over, and Ikki genuinely thanks him, saying he feels perfect. Moribashi then gets serious, and Ikki plans to exploit the king's biggest weakness. While watching this, Toka points out that Moribashi never uses sweeping attacks with his spear, which Kanata interprets to give Ikki an upper hand. However, that'd only be true if Moribashi was a normal opponent. Ikki lunges in once again, successfully dodging Astral Trio. That is until the final strike seems to curve toward him, slicing his ear.
With that, King Moribashi has successfully drawn first blood.
And Ikki notices that the announcer didn't mention anything about the curving spear. Alice exclaims that Ikki almost got Moribashi, but Shizuku doesn't believe that Ikki simply missed a dodge. Ikki is now running away, doing everything he can to analyze his opponent. It takes a few minutes, but he finally determines the curving to be a non-magical technique. And if the spear's not actually bending, then the solution is simple. Ikki confronts the spear head-on, parrying the strikes instead of dodging. With this brute force strategy, he begins inching closer and closer to the king.
Somehow, another one seems like a completely different person than before.
But wait, look at that!
Just as he gets within striking range, Ikki purposely allows an attack to pierce his shoulder. Shizuku is shocked, and Alice points out that Entetsu has a bite taken out of it.
Well, devices are made of magic, so it makes sense that Tiger King can nullify it.
Yeah, and if the device snaps, the blazer will be rendered unconscious.
Ikki took that hit in order to protect his device, and he realizes that Moribashi purposely lured him into that trap. Ikki then thinks about how he's unable to dodge due to the curving spear, and he's now unable to parry due to Tiger Bite. Shizuku can't believe that Ikki's being toyed with, but Kureno has different thoughts. She points out that Moribashi was counting on that last attack to decide the match, which now means he has nothing left to hide. Ikki then declares it to be his turn to surprise the king.
Looks like Kurogane is trying the same charge a third time, and ouch! He's run clean through.
The afterimage vanishes as Ikki appears on the opposite side within striking range. Moribashi knows he can't react fast enough, but surprisingly his spear strikes first, and the crowd goes wild. Moribashi is aware that Kurogane froze up again, but he decides it'd be disrespectful to take it easy on him. Kiriko exclaims that Ikki definitely slowed down, and that the cause might be fear due to his fight with Edelweiss. Kureno confidently declares this to be wrong, and that she knows exactly what's happening. Ikki is now extremely frustrated as he feels helpless and broken. Then due to his reduced speed, he struggles to flee, taking numerous wounds in the process. Outside the stadium, the spectators feel as though this match is already over, but a lone girl has total faith in the worst one. Ikki slips on a pool of his own blood, yet the king doesn't capitalize. Moribashi recognizes that he's had 5 opportunities to end this, but it's Ikki's unbelievable fighting spirit that's forcing him to hesitate. Though after remembering his precious little sister, the king steels himself to finish this. The king attacks as Ikki spots his impending defeat, which brings back memories from his duel with Edelweiss. He suddenly remembers copying her sword style in their final clash, and he pulls those memories into reality. With inhuman speed, he passes by Moribashi's spear, delivering a deep wound to his side. Alice and Shizuku are ecstatic, as Kureno explains that Ikki's body had been unconsciously trying to mimic Edelweiss, but he just now remembered how to do it. Moribashi comes to, picking himself up off the ground, asking what the heck just happened. Ikki apologizes for taking so long to sort himself out, just before vanishing, landing numerous more attacks.
My eyes can't even keep up anymore.
And looks like the king has abandoned attacking in favor of defense.
Ikki begins chipping away at the magical armor, and Shizuku watches Komei leave the stadium. Komei really doesn't want her brother to get hurt while trying to help her, and Shizuku arrives revealing that Kiriko already explained everything. Shizuku states it's an older brother's job to care for their younger sister, so it's perfectly okay to rely on them. She then walks away, but not before asking Komei what it is she really wants to do.
Moribashi's armor has finally gave way.
And yet, he still refuses to fall.
The king tries leaping away, but he's cut again and again and again. Ikki activates Ito Shura, just as Moribashi hears a familiar voice.
Go!
Now reinvigorated, Moribashi throws his spear and the last of his magic, launching one final tiger bite at his foe. Kureno says this is bad, since Ikki is moving way too fast to dodge. He takes the hit directly to the chest. It was another afterimage, and Ikki descends from above to deliver the winning blow. Moribashi then falls to the ground.
Keep on winning.
The crowd roars with the conclusion of this incredible battle, and Ikki walks away with his head held high, though he finds a lone woman with crimson hair blocking his exit. Stella apologizes for the delay and congratulates him on the hard-fought victory. She then enters into the arena to find that her delayed match will commence right now. Icy Sneer, however, demands for Stella to be punished for her tardiness, but the committee doesn't agree. Stella, however, backs Icy Sneer's statement, declaring that her punishment will be to battle all the winners of Block B in a 4 vs 1. Icy Sneer didn't want anything this extreme, but she's well aware she stands no chance of winning in a fair fight. Ikki frantically asks if she can really win against Icy Sneer and 3 members of Akatsuki. She openly admits to being unsure, but she absolutely refuses to let the members of Akatsuki go unpunished. With the rage for her injured friends boiling over, the Crimson Princess boldly struts into the arena. The 7-star Sword Art Festival is well underway, as Stella struts into the arena to take on her 4 opponents. Toka and Kanata both appreciate what Stella is doing, but Kanata is concerned because Tatara's reflection ability is the worst possible matchup for Stella. The match begins. Tatara goes on the offensive, but Stella simply dodges without even drawing her device. Tatara yells at Kazamatsuri, whose lion lets loose a magical roar, holding Stella in place. With a 1-2 combo, the Crimson Princess is launched from the arena, slamming into and demolishing the concrete wall.
She only has 10 seconds to get back into the ring, assuming she's alive.
As expected, a 4v1 was simply too much for the overconfident princess.
Shizuku is pissed at Stella's pitiful performance, and Kurano states this is all due to Saikyo's training, because Stella chose to take those attacks. The Crimson Princess bursts forth from the rubble, walking back into the arena completely unscathed. Stella reveals that these attacks don't feel threatening in the slightest, due to her week-long training session with the Demon Princess. Tatara is annoyed to be taken lightly, and Stella declares she's here for revenge, so she'll be sure not to let them die. Tatara charges forward as Stella raises her sword with a single hand. Tatara is planning to reflect this blow, but she notices Stella's offhand curled into a fist. The sword is deflected, Stella transfers all that energy into her fist, but Tatara reflects that as well, successfully shattering Stella's arm. Tatara then slumps to the ground, completely knocked out.
How did she avoid that reflect?
Stella did no such thing, she just followed through with her mangled hand.
Icy Sneer is terrified of the Crimson Princess's raw power, but Hiraga informs her that he has a plan. Icy Sneer lands a direct hit with her freezing gaze, but Stella's Empress dress melts it with ease. The lion roars a second time before moving in to bite. Stella lets loose a roar of her own, causing the lion to flee with its tail between its legs. She quickly moves in to finish off the defenseless Kazamatsuri, but her blade is forcefully stopped by a human hand.
Ref, call the match. Outside interference is against the rules.
Hold up, that maid is now wearing the lion's collar, meaning she's now Kazamatsuri's device.
Charlotte then throws these barriers, successfully cutting Stella's face. She then leaps over the next slash, bringing down an axe kick, shattering Stella's shoulder. The Crimson Princess's Empress dress consumes Charlotte, but the barriers even keep out the heat. Stella knocks away a second set of blades, which are sent flying straight toward the crowd. Kurano briefly stops time, successfully shooting all the blades out of the air. Ikki compliments her, followed by Shizuku asking how he's feeling. He apparently got healed with magic, causing Kiriko to pout that she wasn't the one to do it. Ikki brings up Stella's match, and everyone agrees that Hiraga needs to be taken out first. Kurano, however, states it's easier said than done, because her shots couldn't even destroy the blades created by Charlotte. Stella openly admits that she can't break the barrier with a single hand, yet she also declares that Charlotte won't be able to stop her. This maid points out that Stella just contradicted herself. However, Stella said she can't do it one-handed. The princess's injury is then devoured by the flames, as her arm begins to straighten out. Now, it's common knowledge that water magic is the only element that's able to heal, meaning the only explanation is that Stella just melted and recast her own bones. With a surge, the Crimson Princess summons her trump card, giving Charlotte one final chance to retreat. The unstoppable sword collides with the unbreakable shield, resulting in the maid being pushed back. Charlotte screams for Kazamatsuri to flee, but is met by a gentle hug from behind. Stella's trump card is miraculously repelled, so she simply summons another, finishing off her opponents. Hiraga just finished up his plan, and rubble begins falling into the ring, combining together as a metal golem. The train whip lashes out towards Stella, though she easily runs up its arm, lopping off the head. Though upon landing, she senses danger, barely avoiding the icy gaze.
Huh? Why did she look so panicked?
That attack was many times stronger than before.
Stella is then cornered, taking Icy Sneer's magic head on, which actually freezes her sword solid. She's genuinely impressed until she notices the hollow gaze staring back at her. Hiraga used his magic to hijack Icy Sneer's brain, effectively bypassing the brain's safety systems. Her eyes have even begun to bleed, as Hiraga states it's such a shame that her life will be ruined. With the hostage situation in front of her, the Crimson Princess tosses her sword to the side, allowing Deus Ex Machina to pummel her.
I can't believe she just threw away her device.
I'm not sure if there'll even be anything left of her.
As the dust settles, you see a very bloody Stella, standing strong as she didn't give an inch through that beating. Hiraga was under the assumption that she'd given up. Stella, however, exclaims to have done no such thing. He's just unworthy to be cut down by her blade. The Crimson Princess then unleashes the full depth of her magic, engulfing the entirety of the arena. Her opponents and even the referees are all rendered unconscious, as Stella switched her magic to phantom form at the last second.
Wow, I can't believe Stella saved that overwhelming technique until the end.
Well, she didn't want to use it because our safety team is the only reason it didn't consume the entire town.
Using this ability was Saikyo's idea, and Stella leaves the arena, well aware that Oma stepped in, redirecting that attack. Hold up, somehow I forgot to mention that Hiraga was revealed to be a remotely controlled doll the entire time. The Prime Minister thanks Oma, but also states that Kurano could have handled the blast. Oma, however, couldn't take that risk because he needs Stella to be willing to fight him with everything she has. Though he is beyond happy to see that Stella has grown, due to their previous encounter. Alice was worried that Stella was going to lose, and Kiriko mentions that last attack would probably kill her, if her body was vaporized. Shizuku is impressed with how much Stella powered up, however Ikki declares the only change to be in her mental state. This causes the entire group to shudder, upon realizing that Stella's been holding back this entire time. Shizuku then orders Ikki to go rest, but he refuses because he needs to cheer on his cute little sister. Kiriko wants Ikki to cheer for her as well, but he suggests she worry more about her upcoming opponent. Kiriko asks what makes Amane so special, prompting Ikki to explain that he just has a bad feeling about him. The girls then turn to leave, just as Amane arrives. Back at Hagen Academy, Kanata wonders if Stella is going to easily win the 7 stars, but Toka reminds her that Oma can rival her raw power. She then reveals her disappointment in not competing this year, so Kanata suggests that Toka should challenge Ikki after the 7 stars is over. Utakata then wakes up and falls out of bed upon remembering the battle with Akatsuki. They try to force him to calm down, but he needs to warn everyone that it's impossible to beat Amane. Ikki is congratulated by Amane, but he doesn't know how to respond. Shizuku kicks Amane away, stating that Ikki doesn't like him. Amane, however, came here today to apologize and even offer atonement for hurting them. Kiriko interrupts, saying it's time for them to head to the waiting room, but Amane just looks at her in confusion. She introduces herself as Amane's next opponent, but he honestly couldn't care less who she is. This pisses Kiriko off to no end, followed by him confidently declaring that they won't be fighting today. At that exact moment, Kiriko receives a phone call from the vice director at her hospital. She's informed that every single patient has gone critical, and that a helicopter is already on the way to pick her up. With pure rage, Kiriko accuses Amane of harming her patients, but of course he immediately denies this. Ikki then remembers that Amane won all of his matches by default, and suddenly realizes the terrifying power standing before him. Up to this point, the group believed Amane could predict the future, but that doesn't quite fit. You see, Utakata has the ability to choose any potential future, so it should have been impossible for him to lose to such a weak opponent. The only possible explanation is that Amane actually wields the power to create futures. Amane reveals that his power, nameless glory, is the ability to wish anything into existence, though he doesn't control how it comes to be. Kiriko threatens to kill Amane as a way to immediately save her patients, prompting him to say that he could simply wish not to die. Amane then exclaims that he will simply wish for Ikki to become the 7 stars king, and he's instantly shoved away. Ikki then threatens to give Amane more than a push, if he dares to interfere with any of his matches. This demon takes a few steps away, before turning his twisted smile back toward Ikki. Amane agrees to not help him, and exclaims that he just loves to watch Ikki struggle. This is the first time Ikki has truly looked into Amane's eyes, and the void he finds genuinely scares him. Shortly after that, Kiriko drops out of the tournament, followed by Shizuku completely dominating her opponent. Later that evening, Ikki is brooding in the bath, as he just can't shake the feeling that he's met Amane before, sometime in his distant past. Alice tells Ikki not to worry so much, and even offers to help take his mind off of things. Ikki immediately shuts down that joke, but it did actually help him to relax. Alice then reveals that Shizuku's come up with a plan to beat Amane, just as Byakuya, Ikki's next opponent, enters the bath, asking why Ikki is acting as if he's already won. A flustered Ikki frantically explains the situation, only to realize he's being messed with. Byakuya then begins stroking Ikki's very impressive muscles. Ikki attempts to flee using Alice as an excuse, but she'd rather join in on the fun. Ikki is now very concerned for his innocence when Byakuya is sent flying across the bath. It's explained that his touching really was for research purposes only. Using this opening, Ikki and Alice leave the bath, just as drinks suddenly appear in their hands. Byakuya apparently has the power to teleport objects, which he uses to force his opponent out of the ring. Though arguably more importantly, he thoroughly researches his competitors, even to the point of knowing exactly what drinks Ikki and Alice would prefer. While heading back to his room, Ikki thinks about Stella and decides to go visit her, though upon ringing her doorbell, he doesn't get a response. He somberly returns to his own room to find Stella waiting outside. Ikki carefully sneaks up behind her, barely ducking under a roundhouse kick. She apologizes, explaining that this past week, Miss Saikyo was constantly attacking her from behind. They discuss their matches. She compliments him for stealing Edelweiss's swordplay, and Ikki complains he's just not as good as the twin wings. Stella finds him adorable when he's frustrated, and Ikki's heart melts upon seeing her smile. After a lengthy kiss, Stella asks if Ikki missed her, and he reveals very much so. Stella declares it was wrong for her to up and leave without telling him, and she even believes a punishment is in order for this behavior. Ikki doesn't feel that's necessary, though he moves in for a kiss anyway, but Stella states that's not enough. In an attempt to satisfy her pride, Ikki leans closer, gently biting her ear. A jolt goes through her body, followed by Ikki biting her neck. This was a little too effective, so he hastily puts some space between them, but accidentally pulls the robe off her shoulder. With her chest exposed, Stella pulls his head closer, saying it's okay. The last of Ikki's restraint then flees his body as he... Now, snapped back to their senses, this embarrassed duo calms themselves down, before Ikki goes to answer the door. He opens it, immediately slams it shut, followed by Sarah Bloodlily stepping through the wall. She's come here tonight to paint Ikki as her nude model. He exclaims that he never agreed to this, so she's willing to compromise by getting naked as well. You see, after feeling up his body, she's unable to think of anyone else, and at that, a very pissed off Stella cuts between them. Ikki immediately explains, followed by Stella refusing to let anyone else see Ikki's nude body. Sarah then reveals that she's actually a famous painter under the pen name Mario Rosso, and Stella's family actually owns some of her greatest works. Sarah then offers to paint a portrait with them as bride and groom, when suddenly Stella doesn't think one new painting is such a bad idea. Now finding himself outnumbered without any allies, Ikki sprints out of the room. He knows he can't stay with Alice because the girls would expect that, and he's definitely not about to sleep alone with Shizuku. Hence why he's currently trying to convince his brother to let him stay the night. Now inside the room, they actually have a heart-to-heart, where you learn that Oma isn't actually working for the terrorists. Their father just so happened to ask Oma to work alongside them, and it just so happened to align with his goal of fighting the Crimson Princess. Ikki asks about his obsession with Stella, which turns out to be Oma's desire to battle against overwhelmingly powerful magic. Then the fact that she recently recognized Oma as her rival is the only reason he no longer needs to kill Ikki. After hearing all of this, Ikki is just relieved to know that the big brother he always looked up to really hasn't changed. They wake up the next morning to a message from the 7-star committee. Due to a new development, the tournament has been shortened, so they will each have to participate in 2 battles today. Kagami congratulates everyone on their victories, though Stella is currently sulking on the floor. Alice explains that Stella feels responsible for the accelerated schedule, due to her knocking out the entirety of Block B. This is particularly troublesome for her boyfriend, who can only use his trump card once a day. Ikki claims to not be worried about the change, and Shizuku asks if Kagami knows the real reason behind this. She states it's all tied to money, which is in turn all tied to Stella. Our princess demands an explanation, so Kagami reminds her that she's genuine royalty, and an A-rank blazer on top of that. Her fame has caused the price to broadcast this tournament to absolutely skyrocket. Then due to Stella speedrunning her bracket, she would be absent from the tournament for 2 days. This caused the broadcasting companies to feel cheated and demand the tournament to be shortened so that the Crimson Princess will fight again sooner. Stella now feels worse than before, until Kagami reveals that Hagan Academy was partying all night long, partly due to Stella avenging them. Ikki and Shizuku then discuss whether or not Amane wished for this change. After explaining the Amane situation, Stella exclaims they should report his behavior to the committee. Kagami, however, points out they don't have any proof, not to mention he could just wish to not be disqualified. Shizuku nonchalantly states that she has a way to beat Amane, and she even teases Stella for obviously worrying about her. It's come time for Ikki to head to the waiting room, and Stella is unsure how she should react. He tells her that the accelerated tournament is actually a good thing, as he'll now be able to meet Stella in the finals one day sooner than expected. Now in the waiting room, Ikki finds himself in an unwanted staring match with Corrado. A few moments go by before Sword Eater is called into the arena.
It was difficult, stopping myself from kicking your ass.
Ikki suggests for him to focus on his current opponent, and watches in disbelief as Corrado materializes his newly dual-wielded device. You see, a Blazer's device is directly connected to their identity, meaning Corrado completely reforged himself just to surpass Ikki.
Looks like Sword Eater is entering the arena with his new device.
Well, his marginal counter does synergize perfectly with dual blades.
Then we also have Sarah Bloodlily entering the arena with her normal risque attire.
The match begins, and Corrado wastes no time attacking. Sarah evades by scattering paint and sinking into the floor. Appearing on the opposite side, she throws red paint, forcing Corrado to dodge. Suddenly, they're tied together, so Sword Eater charges straight ahead, slicing the paint out of the air. He lands a strong attack, launching Sarah backwards.
Man, that was a hard hit.
But look at her arm, it's coated with steel.
She paints a Thompson in the air, before unleashing a hail of bullets toward her foe. Sword Eater deflects them before counterattacking, but his swords curve away from his target. Sarah creates and explodes a missile at point-blank range.
His swords formed a defensive cocoon.
The smoke clears and Corrado is greeted by an army of Thompson-wielding skeletons. Thousands of bullets impact his flesh, yet they harmlessly glide over his skin. Ikki recognizes this to be Ayasuji's father's greatest technique, which Ikki used to win their duel. Cutting through the army, he descends upon Sarah, exclaiming he only cares about fighting the worst one. She swiftly paints a figure, instantly blocking his blade.
Then fight him as much as you like.
This Ikki lookalike activates Ito Shura, quickly slicing up and driving Corrado back. You come to find out that Corrado begged Ayasuji's father to train him, all for the sake of defeating Ikki. With some words of encouragement spurring him on, Corrado manages to cut down this clone, only to be impaled by two more Ikkis. Sarah Bloodlily is the winner, yet the stadium is completely silent.
I thought she was supposed to be a rank C. Could she have been hiding her true strength?
That ability to replicate other Blazers and her massive magic power are easily on par with the rank A.
Murabashi reveals that those clones were just as strong as the real thing, and warns Byakuya he'll have to face that monster next if he wins. He declares victory will be his with only 23 moves, but Murabashi warns him Ikki is a trickster. Byakuya explains Ikki's past, revealing that he can only use his trump card once a day, so Ikki will definitely want to save it to fight Sarah Bloodlily. Byakuya and Ikki then both enter the arena. The match begins! Ito Resetsu! Byakuya instantly hits the floor. Ikki used Ito Resetsu to instantly defeat his round 2 opponent.
Wow, he just set the record with a mere 0.8 seconds.
That's a massive 19-second reduction from the previous record.
Ikki confidently walks out of the ring, before almost collapsing due to the toll of his own ability. Now, he just has to find a way to defeat Bloody Da Vinci, without the use of his trump card. A short while later, in the infirmary, you find Ikki asleep and Stella beside him watching Shizuku's match on TV. Her opponent has the ability to use trackless step just like Toka, so Shizuku counters this by putting a thin layer of magical water across the ground. Now, Sarah Bloodlily is currently tied up on the floor. This is due to Stella walking into the room, just as Sarah was about to strip her sleeping boyfriend. Stella declares that Ikki doesn't want this.
That's why I came while he's asleep.
Stella pulls her bindings even tighter, telling her to just use Ikki's brother instead. Sarah declares that won't work, because it's Ikki's strong body, yet gentle face, which makes him the perfect option. Stella actually acknowledges her passion, just as Sarah mentioned she needs to use the restroom. Stella tries untying her, but only manages to wrench it even tighter. Now awake, Ikki suggests just cutting her free, allowing Sarah to run out of the room. Stella begins explaining the situation, but Ikki cuts her off because he already understands, though he asks her to keep any fetishes just between them. Stella's now frantic as Ikki reveals he's just messing with her, and that it was payback for yesterday. Ikki lovingly caresses her face, causing her to jokingly purr like a cat, just as Ikki's father entered the room. They're both surprised to see his father, and they're reminded that it's literally his job. Plus, 3 of his kids are participating in this tournament. Stella is beyond embarrassed, but Itsuki greets her as if he didn't see anything. He's come to speak with Ikki Kurogane, causing Stella to feel an urge to leave, but she firmly plants her feet to support her boyfriend. Itsuki reveals he's been thinking about cutting Ikki out of the family, since he's become too famous to hide. Stella bursts out in anger, but Ikki asks her to please hold back. Itsuki explains there's benefits to this for both of them, but even so, Ikki asks for time to think it over. After Dad leaves, Stella's rage comes out, as she doesn't understand how Ikki can be so calm. He apparently was expecting to cross this bridge eventually, though he can't believe Dad asked for his opinion. It's obvious Sarah overheard this conversation, but she chooses not to weigh in. She instead begins asking a question, but Ikki immediately refuses. Sarah starts pouting, but it doesn't do her any good, so she'll just have to return later while he's asleep. Ikki grabs her shoulder to prevent her from leaving, causing the strap of her apron to break, revealing everything. Stella covers his eyes, as Sarah points out it must have got damaged while Stella was yanking on the restraints. Sarah casually ties the strap back together, but Stella is worried that it may break again and distract Ikki during their match. She offers to give Sarah a dress, and even help her to pick out some new clothes, but Sarah declines. Stella then gives her an ultimatum: buy new clothes or have the apron permanently seared into her skin. A few moments later, Ikki meets up with Alice, who is accompanied by Shizuku. While waiting for the rest of the group, they discuss Amane and how Shizuku has a secret plan. A depressed Stella then arrives alongside Sarah, who is spilling out of her jersey. Alice attempts but fails to fix this, as Sarah's chest is simply too big for Stella's clothes. Though after a quick glance towards Shizuku, Stella regains her vigor and leads the way to the shopping mall. Due to their collective fame, they gather a large crowd, but each of them use their skills/magic to easily escape the commotion. Now inside, Sarah grabs the two nearest articles of clothing, saying either of these will do just fine. Stella scolds her for this behavior, and Alice asks why she doesn't care about fashion. Sarah states she has nobody to dress up for, causing Alice to come up with a despicable idea. Alice declares that if she looks good enough, she might be able to win Ikki's heart, which in turn would allow her free access to her model. Sarah respectfully reminds him that Ikki and Stella are a couple, but Alice points out that it's not uncommon for people to cheat. Stella obviously protests this idea, but Alice counters, proclaiming love to be a constant battle. Stella then vows to continually win Ikki's affection, as the group begins to separate. Ikki is actually livid with Alice's provocation, but he can't deny it was an effective strategy. After searching for a while, Stella decides on a yukata and heads to the dressing room to find that Shizuku had the same idea. Stella winds up fitting perfectly, yet for some reason Shizuku looks noticeably better. It's revealed that Stella is ignorant to yukata etiquette, as to where Shizuku was taught as a child. Stella realizes she has to give up on this outfit, when surprisingly Shizuku offers to lend a hand. Stella obviously doesn't trust her, but they come together agreeing that Sarah is the real enemy. Elsewhere in the store, Alice prioritizes makeup and even gives an in-depth tutorial on how makeup is applied. They grab some samples before entering into Alice's hermit house, which is a world created within the shadows. Sarah wonders why the traitor Alice would go so far to help her. Apparently Alice can instinctively tell that Sarah isn't a bad person, and inquires as to why she's working for Rebellion. Sarah reveals that she's only with Rebellion because of a debt, and that she's also been using it as a means to search the world for the perfect model. Alice genuinely hopes she's able to complete her painting, and Sarah declares Ikki to be the perfect man. Alice points out this is sounding an awful lot like she's in love, and Sarah hadn't thought about that until now. Ikki is patiently waiting at the meeting area, and watches as Alice and Sarah are the first to return. He's surprised to see her wearing less than before, as Alice explains that Sarah was too weak to properly move around in normal clothing. At the very least, nothing will be accidentally popping out now, and Sarah really does look beautiful. Shizuku then arrives, receiving a compliment of her own, before she announces Stella's grand arrival. Everyone is completely speechless as the Crimson Princess steps out in a bunny outfit. Ikki immediately asks her to go change, as Shizuku is unable to contain her laughter. Stella runs away super embarrassed, threatening to get her payback later. Ikki asks Shizuku to please tone down the bullying, but she blatantly refuses. Shizuku and Alice then head out first, and a few minutes go by before Stella returns, now holding a baby. This child had just poofed out of midair, so he has to be a young blazer. They take him to child services but decide to stick around until a parent arrives. Though upon waking up, the baby begins to cry. Ikki and Stella don't know how to respond, so Sarah forcefully takes him, successfully soothing his wails. Our couple is very impressed, but the kid has begun grabbing at Sarah's chest in search of food. Ikki is about to go ask child services for a bottle, when Sarah suddenly allows the kid to use her body. Stella can't believe what she's witnessing, but Sarah silences her, saying this will comfort him, even though it won't produce anything. Bloody Da Vinci then begins singing a beautiful Latin lullaby, completely mesmerizing Ikki and Stella. The baby is currently asleep in Ikki's arms. Sarah is sketching this image into her notebook, and it's obvious that she truly is a master artist. Ikki randomly mentions that she must really love art, causing her to reveal that she used to hate it. You see, Sarah was born with an illness which makes her body extremely frail. She grew up in a small art studio where her father spent all his time working on a painting. Day after day, night after night, he continued to slave until he finally died on that canvas. Sarah's not even able to remember his face, as the image of his back is all that's left in her mind. The hatred left behind drove Sarah to despise this painting, but she still couldn't bring herself to destroy her father's passion. She eventually decided she would finish this painting, and was then taken in by a Mr. Kazamatsuri, which is how she was introduced into rebellion. Sarah then sold off all of her paintings to have her illness partially treated, just so that she could travel the world in search of her perfect model. Ikki wants to know why she'd go so far for a father that never showed her any love, prompting her to declare that you don't need a reason to love somebody. This is a revelation to Ikki, and he genuinely thanks her for sharing her story. Sarah mentions that he can pay her back by becoming her model, but instead of declining, Ikki offers the proposition. If Sarah Bloodlily wins their match, he will agree. However, if Ikki is the victor, she must give up on using him.
Round 3 is underway as Panzer Grizzly Kaga Renji appears from the west gate.
Using his steel skin and sheer size, Kaga bulldozes straight through his foes.
Then from the east gate we have the A-rank Gale Sword Emperor.
His true strength is still unknown, as he's yet to take an opponent seriously.
Kaga reveals it's been 6 years since they last fought each other, and he spent every day training for this exact moment. Oma, however, doesn't care, saying his seriousness will all depend on Kaga. Panzer Grizzly roars as his skin transforms into steel. He then unleashes a never-before-seen technique, sprouting an additional 4 arms. Oma shows no sign of urgency, as he's assaulted by hundreds of blows. Kaga's honestly surprised with how effective this is. Well, he thought. With 3 swift motions, Oma severs all 8 of his opponent's limbs. Kaga knows this strength isn't natural, and asks how Oma obtained it. Without responding, the Gale Sword Emperor punches straight through Kaga's chest, crushing his heart on the other side. Without delay, Kurano stops time around Kaga's body, giving the medics precious time to try and piece him back together. Stella recognizes that Kaga went all out, so Oma simply returned to that determination. She's also embarrassed upon realizing that Oma didn't take their battle seriously, and she unleashes an aura of pure killing intent, which Oma receives with a smile. A few moments later, Kazamatsuri arrives, taking a seat next to the Crimson Princess. Stella is wary until she learns that Sarah Bloodlily is actually her stepsister. Kazamatsuri exclaims it was foolish for Ikki to use his trump card in the previous match, but Stella has full faith in her boyfriend. Just moments before his match begins, Ikki goes to meet with his father. He refuses to willingly cut ties with his family, even knowing it would benefit him. Itsuki asks if that's how he truly feels, and Ikki's shocked to be asked for his opinion. Itsuki declares that due to his position, he's unable to support Ikki's goals, and asks if that's okay. Ikki suddenly remembers that his father was raised with the sole purpose of leading the Kurogane household, so openly supporting an F-rank blazer would be literally impossible for him. Ikki then realizes that Dad was actually trying to help him by severing their connection, because doing so doesn't require Ikki's permission. He then leaves the room, openly stating that he's perfectly okay with having a father like Itsuki.
Thanks to Mage Knight Korono's intervention, Kaga Renji will make a full recovery.
I mean, it was only one damaged organ. That's not even a big deal.
And here we have Sarah Bloodlily taking the stage looking a bit different than before.
With her appearance aside, she also just seems a lot more serious than normal.
From the opposite gate, we have another one looking extremely relaxed.
Which is very strange, since he's already used his once-a-day trump card.
Ikki takes a moment to thank Sarah, explaining that her words to help him come to terms with his father. But she responds by reminding him of their deal. Ikki declares he has a promise to keep with Stella, and Sarah thinks about her father's painting. Yellow paint explodes into a blinding light, revealing her Necro Battalion as it fades. Kazamatsuri declares that Sarah must be fired up, prompting Stella to reveal their bet. Unlike Sword Eater, Ikki is unable to redirect to this hail of bullets, so he implements Trackless Step, causing them to miss. Noticing precision fire isn't working, Sarah switches to a wide-range volley. But with the reduced density, Ikki's now able to redirect them. He begins cutting down the army as a man exclaims that Itsuki's son is absolutely amazing. You come to learn that a rank E knight has enough magic to defend against a gunshot. However, a single bullet could be fatal to a rank F. This is the reason why Itsuki can't support his rank F son, as it would encourage others to put themselves in grave danger.
Looks like another just finished off the final skeleton.
But Bloodlily seems to have vanished.
Using only his ears, Ikki corners his foe, but his sword is blocked by a familiar Valkyrie. Stella's hair stands on end due to the sheer power emanating from this clone. Ikki is overwhelmed and pushed back, as Sarah proclaims this to be the only person Ikki hasn't beat. Thanks to Edelweiss's swordplay, Ikki is able to defend himself and even creates an opening. He dives in, but is seemingly cut out of nowhere.
What the heck just happened?
Edelweiss cuts so perfectly, her blades can leave behind vacuums.
Using every drop of his magic, Ikki just barely manages to dodge that attack. Edelweiss then stabs her sword into the ground, sending a shockwave through Ikki's body. He manages to block her follow-up slash, only to be met with a knee to the stomach. Even Stella has lost hope, as she can't think of any way for Ikki to win. Defying expectations, Ikki casually stands up, leaping back into the arena.
He purposely redirected himself into the stairs, which gradually slowed him down, at least when compared to a concrete wall.
The referee asks if Ikki actually wants to continue this match, prompting him to declare that he's already seen through this clone. Sarah tells Ikki to stop bluffing, but he responds by asserting his victory. Edelweiss attacks, knocking away Ikki's sword, but he calmly sidesteps her blow and returns a stab. Ikki ducks under the next slash, immediately followed by another counter. Sarah can't comprehend how this is possible, causing Ikki to explain that her clones are hollow. Their power is equivalent to the real thing, but they're simple-minded due to a lack of experience. Sarah confidently declares he's still outclassed, which Ikki can't disagree with. He purposely leaves his head open, prompting the mindless clone to take the bait. This turns into a test of pure speed, as her sword descends from above and Ikki's closes in from the side. Blood trickles down his face, as the bisected Edelweiss vanishes.
I can't believe he did it. He actually overcame that opponent.
It was only possible because two-handed weapons tend to slice faster.
Ikki closes in on Sarah, who's completely out of options. Remembering her father's painting, she desperately creates 4 Ikkis just to try and buy some time. Then using every last drop of her magic, she begins turning her raw passion into a painting. Ikki immediately recognizes this gladiator to be the image created by Sarah's soul. Ikki jumps in to meet this warrior head on, but is unable to scratch its skin. He's batted out of the air, completely shattering both of his arms. His sword was flung into the sky as the gladiator descends upon the unarmed Ikki. Blood gushes from its body as Ikki strategically led it through the vacuum slashes. Then catching Intetsu between his teeth, he finishes this battle with a single attack. Sarah then mutters that she won't be keeping their promise, and Ikki is almost glad to hear that she hasn't given up on her dream. Sarah then passes out while thinking about how lucky Stella is to have him. The crowd cheers at this conclusion, and Kazamatsuri can't believe what she witnessed. Stella, however, is left trembling, as she knows Edelweiss's sword actually hit first, and that Ikki purposely used the thick part of his skull as a shield in order to slow down the blade. The Crimson Princess is genuinely unsure if she can beat this type of insanity. However, even so, she finds Ikki to be terrifyingly beautiful. A bit later, after getting patched up, Ikki meets Stella in the stands, where they wait for Shizuku's match to begin.
I'm not sure what's going on, folks, so let's take a look at the waiting rooms.
Last time we ended with Shizuku being gruesomely pinned to the wall, but first, let's go back in time a few hours. We find Shizuku revealing her plan to preemptively ambush Amane, since she has no way to overcome his ability. Alice proclaims she'll be expelled from school, but Shizuku is okay with that as long as she can prevent Amane from facing her brother. Stella nor Ikki would be okay with this. Nevertheless, Shizuku is determined to protect him. She then asks for help, and Alice agrees, since he knows just how deeply Shizuku cares for Ikki. 4 icicles erupt from within a shadow, as one pierces clear through Amane's skull. However, unexpectedly, he just laughs, exclaiming he didn't see this coming. Alice pins his shadow in place, but the lights flicker, freeing Amane, who instantly cuts down Alice. Out of respect for this attempt, Amane declares he won't alert anyone for 1 whole minute. Shizuku charges forward, but slips on Alice's blood, instantly realizing Amane's ability caused her stumble. She launches prison orbs, but amazingly all 3 shots miss. Shizuku asks if his ability can even affect her aim, but Amane just jokingly says that everyone can make a mistake. Taking a cut to her head, Shizuku accidentally backs into a wall, before panicking and showering the room with ice bullets. With merely a wet shirt to show for it, Amane states that time is up.
I'm not sure what's going on, folks, so let's take a look at the waiting rooms.
The surveillance cameras kick on, followed by Amane asking for Shizuku to not be punished harshly. He announces to the entire stadium that she did this due to her womanly love for her older brother Ikki Kurogane. At this point, Shizuku is physically unable to respond. However, the wall explodes, with Stella daring Amane to speak another word. Shizuku then blacks out as Stella carries her away. Just as expected, Shizuku winds up disqualified from the tournament, though she's not expelled as even the judges find Amane's actions to be suspicious. Later that same night, Ikki is in the park, using a piece of paper to slice through wood. He attempts but fails to cut through metal, just as Stella arrives. Ikki immediately thanks her for rescuing Shizuku, because he doesn't think he could have done it without assaulting Amane, prompting her to state it's only natural to protect your future sister. He then warns Stella that her next opponent, Oma Kurogane, is extremely strong, causing her to throw an explosive ball of paper, stating that she's grown since their previous encounter. Stella then departs, but not before reminding Ikki that she'll be waiting for him in the finals. It's only a moment later that Prime Minister Tsukikage arrives, but Ikki is much too cautious to have a conversation with him. Though that all goes right out the window when Tsukikage mentions that Ikki won't be fighting Amane tomorrow.
She's back once again. She's royalty from another land. She's the Crimson Princess, Stella Vermilion. He's entering from the opposite side. He's the prodigy from Japan. He's the Gale Sword Emperor, Oma Kurogane.
Toka and Kanata just arrived to the 7 Stars as well, and sit down beside Ikki, explaining that they came alongside the Demon Princess.
So, Miss Saikyo, what's your take on this current matchup?
I mean, it's a battle containing 2 A-rank blazers, so it's bound to be a great fight.
Oma charges forward and is met by an ineffective barrage of fire magic. Stella then deploys her Empress dress just before Oma's sword clashes with her own, launching them both backwards. Kanata is beyond impressed, prompting Ikki to declare that Stella is just getting warmed up, though Toka says the same thing for Oma. Stella concentrates massive amounts of magic into her sword, then simultaneously unleashes 7 flaming dragons, which are all blown away by a single massive tornado. Oma boldly asks if that's the best she can do, though Stella appears behind him, followed by blood soaking the ground. Surprisingly, Stella is the one bleeding, and she's very confused as to why her successful attack didn't do any damage. Toka, however, saw this coming, as she ran into the same issue during her duel with Oma. Her sword once again slams into Oma's unflinching side, only to be met by a powerful kick. She wants to know how his body can be so tough, which he exclaims to simply be his resolve. You see, being born a prodigy meant that Oma effortlessly dominated every youth tournament he entered. This led to him growing bored and traveling the world in search of stronger foes. He eventually stumbled upon a blazer known as Tyrant, who would have killed him if Edelweiss didn't come to his rescue. Oma's utter powerlessness in that battle led to him taking drastic measures, as he then releases
Tenru Gusoku.
Stella realizes that until now he was weighing himself down with massive amounts of wind magic, He states it took a long time, but that debilitating amount of air pressure eventually forced his body to adapt and evolve. In the blink of an eye, his blade reaches Stella, forcing her to retreat. He launches wind blades, which Stella successfully reads and dodges, except for the last one, which was conjured through sheer force alone. The Gale Sword Emperor closes the distance, locking blades, followed by him punching his own sword, launching her through the wall and outside the stadium.
I've only ever witnessed someone being blasted out of the stadium once before.
Yeah, but a physical attack without magic isn't dealing any damage to a rank A.
Descending back into the arena, Stella asks what drives Oma to push himself so far. He declares it's simply a childish dream, and Stella honestly finds it admirable that his motivation can be so simple. The Crimson Princess then raises her sword toward the heavens, before plunging it deep into her own chest. It was their final day of training when Miss Saikyo asked if Stella knew what was holding her back. Of course, she had no idea, causing the Demon Princess to give her a very real and deep wound. Saikyo isn't pulling her punches anymore, as the shocked Stella can barely defend herself. The Demon Princess declares it's better for her to miss the 7 stars due to an injury, than for her to die fighting Oma. This overwhelming opponent pushes Stella to the brink of giving up, which is where Miss Crimson Princess then remembers that she's renowned for wielding the strongest magic power in the whole world. For the first time ever, she lets go of all restraint, as a proud Saikyo explains that her weakness was not relying enough on her own overwhelming magic power. A monstrous roar bellows from deep within the Crimson Princess, shaking the entire arena and even causing Oma to step back. She cautions her opponent to start defending himself, before seemingly teleporting across the ring, driving her fist deep into his stomach.
Whoa, that blow left burn marks on his skin.
No, those burns definitely reach all the way to his bones.
Ikki finally understands, prompting Toka to ask for an explanation. It turns out that Stella was never a mere fire user, as her true power causes her to manifest the abilities of a mythical dragon. She was just too powerful to ever realize that she was using her magic wrong. Stella charges straight toward her foe, and is met with a lightning-fast deep cut to her chest, though without missing a beat she breaks his shin with a kick. Now struggling to stand, Oma watches in amazement as Stella's wound instantly closes itself. Upon taking another hit, Oma begins to tremble, as he's reminded of his battle against the tyrant. His blade successfully pierces Stella's hand, but she simply grabs hold of it and begins pummeling Oma with her other fist, before ending this flurry with an uppercut. For a brief moment, Oma even debates on just giving up, but his resolve holds true as he forces himself back up.
Did he seriously just stand up with a broken leg?
He's manipulated the air into forming a makeshift cast.
The Gale Sword Emperor then summons his trump card, declaring that it's time to end this. Stella accepts his challenge, followed by these massive elemental swords colliding. All the while, Director Kurano is forced to evacuate the civilians, as Stella's blade cuts through the stands, even extending into the ocean.
Looks like the Crimson Princess is the victor due to her superior magic power.
That's not quite right, because Stella earned this win through her hard work.
Now that last blow left Oma unconscious, but still on his feet, prompting Stella to quickly turn away so that she'll only remember him standing strong. Kanata and Toka are both in awe at what they just witnessed, and Ikki is sweating as he's unsure how he's supposed to fight against that overwhelming power. Toka, however, states that she'll be cheering for Ikki, just as he departs to prepare for his next match. Though before heading to the waiting room, he stops by to visit Alice and Shizuku, who are both fully healed. Shizuku is embarrassed that she failed, on top of thinking that Ikki is disappointed in her. This stern brother wraps her in a big hug, thanking her for loving him so much. Ikki then promises to beat Amane, causing Shizuku to ask for his plan. He, however, doesn't have one, and simply declares that he'd never lose to somebody like him. In the stands, Alice congratulates Stella, who then asks how Shizuku is doing. She proclaims to be feeling wonderful since Ikki gave her such an intimate hug. Alice then wonders why Director Kurano looks so worn out, which she explains to be due to some idiot wrecking half the arena. Stella doesn't make any excuses and instead reminds everyone of the multiple disasters Kurano caused in her youth.
Approaching from the west gate, we have another one, Ikki Kuragane, and his opponent entering from the opposite side, Bad Luck Amane Shinomiya.
Yes, the boy who's yet to have an official match due to all those coincidences.
The referee prepares to begin the semifinal match, just as Amane announces his intention to forfeit. The entire stadium is stunned, followed by Amane exclaiming that even if he wins, everyone will just suspect him of cheating, though he will stick around to cheer Ikki on. Shizuku then realizes that Amane must be planning to use his ability to mess with the finals, causing Stella to rage at the thought of him interfering. Amane, however, promises not to wish for his victory, but Ikki just tells him it's time to drop the act, revealing his true name, Shion Amamiya. Amane demands to know how Ikki learned that name, which he readily reveals that the Prime Minister predicted this whole situation. You then find out that Ikki can't stand Amane because he acts so helpless, just like how Ikki did as a child, and that Amane can't stand Ikki because he somehow has hope for the future. Ikki then openly welcomes Amane's interference in the finals, because he nor Stella will ever accept an outcome that wasn't a fair fight. Amane screams that Ikki should be a nobody, and manifests his device while taking back his forfeit. The referee verifies that Ikki is allowing this, followed by Amane declaring that Ikki will die in this arena. Amane wildly charges forward, yet each strike lands perfectly in Ikki's weak spot. Shizuku suspects that Amane is secretly talented, but Kurano debunks this, saying it's just due to his ability. Ikki begins to counterattack, so Amane jumps backward, blanketing the entire arena with his devices. He then throws two swords, which begin endlessly bouncing around, all the while targeting Ikki. The blades are deflected easily enough, until more and more swords are added to the equation. Amane believes that he will win without being touched, just as Ikki uses his jacket to catch all the swords, before barely nicking Amane's face. This is followed by another flurry of blows, where Ikki lightly grazes Amane's throat. Shizuku is amazed that Ikki is somehow avoiding Amane's ability, prompting Kurano to explain that he's not. His body is just so well trained that it automatically fixes any mistakes. Ikki then lands a deep cut on Amane's arm, before proclaiming that his next strike will finish this. In a fit of rage, Amane drops his sword. Ikki closes in. Die! Ikki instantly collapses to his knees, vomiting, as Toka can see that his heart no longer has an electrical pulse. Amane begins mocking him, proudly revealing that he stopped Ikki's heartbeat. Amane then swings his sword down onto Ikki's neck, causing Stella and Shizuku to both cry out. A massive pool of blood runs across the ring, as it flows out of Amane's body. He demands to know what happened, as Ikki explains that he's able to control his heart manually.
Are you kidding me? Is that even possible?
Without that amount of body control, he'd never be able to copy Edelweiss.
Amane shouts for the worst one to just give up already, though Ikki proclaims that Amane's ability was the easiest to overcome so far. Then after failing to stand back up, Amane passes out, dreaming about his childhood. You find out that due to his ability, Amane never received praise for anything he accomplished. At one point, he even saved people from a burning building, but everyone just assumed he started the fire, so that he could play the hero. This eventually caused Amane to doubt his own mother's love, so he decided to put it to the test by deactivating his magic surrounding his mother's happiness. This caused her to lose almost her entire savings, which resulted in her physically abusing Amane and demanding he wish for her happiness. 6 hellish months later, his absent father came to his rescue. However, it was clear that he only wanted Amane's ability for himself. The F-rank Ikki Kuragane is officially declared the winner of this semi-final match, but for some reason Shizuku can't shake this eerie feeling. The ref takes a moment to administer first aid to Amane, when his eyes suddenly snap open, revealing a black void. Black arms reach out for the referee, but Ikki manages to yank him out of the way.
I don't know what power this is, but it looks downright evil.
But it definitely has me interested.
Everything the arms touch immediately begins to decay, and Amane slowly stands back up, exclaiming that his power is unbeatable. Kurano urges Ikki to leave this to the professionals, causing Amane to lash out at the spectators, telling everyone not to interfere.
Looks like his magic has finally taken physical form.
Wait, Miss Saikyo, where are you going?
To stop his tantrum, of course.
Miss Saikyo lands in the ring, but Ikki orders her to protect the spectators. Saikyo states his match is already over, but he points out that this rampage is only aimed at him. Ikki then thinks back on his grandfather's words of encouragement, and decides he will be that light for Amane. Activating Ito Shura, he begins easily slicing his way through the hands, The crowd cheers for the F-rank knight, as Saikyo proclaims that Amane's ability is much easier to deal with in its physical form. Ikki closes the distance, only for his opponent's strikes to grow even faster. Amane then declares for the first time that he actually wants to win this contest, only to be promptly cut down by Ikki. Ikki asks if he feels frustrated at his loss, and Amane admits that he does. Ikki then encourages him to use that feeling to grow stronger, so that one day he might be able to conquer Ikki. This would be the ultimate achievement for Amane, since his wish-fulfilling magic doesn't work on him.
Not only did he win the match, but he even subdued that rampaging magic, which means tomorrow's finals will unbelievably be the Crimson Princess versus the Rank F.
Shizuku gleefully rushes to the waiting room to congratulate her brother, where she finds him leaning against the wall. But he's not breathing. The doctor emerges from the operating room to Shizuku demanding an update. They fixed multiple issues within his body, but every time they do, something else fails. Kurano then reveals that Ikki was grazed by a hand of death while saving the referee. Shizuku screams that she's going to murder Amane to save her brother, but their father states it won't work since it's still active even though Amane is unconscious. Itsuki wonders if Kurano could somehow reverse time on Ikki's body, but she explains that humans can't survive more than a minute or two of reversal. Shizuku then attempts to force her way into the operating room, just as a familiar voice exclaims that it's much too noisy in here. Of course, Shizuku needs to know if Kiriko can save him, prompting her to respond by asking if Shizuku knows who she's talking to. Elsewhere, Amane finally wakes up, just as Saikyo enters the room. His first instinct is to ask if Ikki survived, prompting her to reveal that Kiriko was the victor. Amane is ready to accept whatever punishment, though he would like Saikyo to put in a good word for him, since he is earnestly sorry. She easily agrees, under the condition that he promises not to interfere with the final match. Miss Saikyo then steps out into the hallway, where she finds Prime Minister Tsukikage. They quickly discuss Akatsuki's downfall, followed by Saikyo asking about his magic power. He, however, refuses to answer, and states that it will be revealed soon enough. Ikki wakes up around 10:30 at night, an entire day later. Realizing he's late for his match, he sprints to the stadium to find Stella standing there. She's been here all day waiting for him, and Ikki curses himself for daring to miss their promised match. Stella is just glad to see his frustration, and asks if everyone else was able to hear that. Kaide announces that the tournament can't end until they've witnessed another one versus the Crimson Princess. Our competitors then lock blades, as the finals is set to take place at 7 p.m. tomorrow. After thoroughly crushing each member of Akatsuki Academy, we reach the final round of the 7 Stars Sword Art Festival. This puts the F-rank worst one to face off against the A-rank Crimson Princess. The town is a chaotic buzz, prompting Rinrin to exclaim that all these people won't fit into the arena. Making their way to Kanata, they ask where's Toka, but apparently she had some urgent business to attend to this morning. The group then briefly discusses the tournament so far, which inevitably brings up the question of who will win. Saijo believes that Stella's unrivaled power will be triumphant, however Rinrin has faith in Ikki's superhuman ability to overcome any odds. This discussion grows a bit heated, until Utakata steps in, leading the way to the hotel. Director Kurano is curious why Miss Saikyo declined to do commentary for the final match. She claims to just want to watch her pupil from the front row, though she's concerned it may get ugly since Ikki and Stella are lovers. Kurano, however, denies that possibility, but she is worried that one of them may die during this match. This causes our duo to think back to their own experience at the 7-Star Sword Art Festival, where they would have killed each other if Kurogane-sensei didn't step in. Miss Saikyo just can't see any way for Ikki to win, and they ponder how he's preparing to face that dragon. Our two women then agree to stop the fight if it turns deadly. Ikki slices through 3 Shadow Beasts as Alice aims for a backstab. With a seemingly blind counter and kick, Alice finds himself on the ground. Miss Maiden complains about harsh treatment, leaving Ikki to awkwardly apologize and thank Alice for the help. His little sister declares he's trained enough, before noticing his sweat is ice cold. Knowing he's been caught, Ikki admits to being completely terrified of tonight's final match against Stella. Not only has she gained the powers of a dragon, but she also knows all of his tricks and secrets. Due to this, he feels the need to sharpen himself to the max, followed by Toka and Moribashi arriving. Shizuku is confused. They explain Ikki asked them for help, and Moribashi reveals he brought along some other losers as well. Our F-rank knight is humbled they've all come to his aid, granted most of them have been wanting a rematch. Noticing his appearance, Toka suggests he take a break, but instead Intetsu is raised. Rina exclaims it tastes like poison, prompting Sarah to wonder why she ordered coffee. Mr. Prime Minister, also chairman of Akatsuki Academy, compliments Sarah's ability to hide them. He then receives an apology for their defeat, as Rina offers to assist him again in the future. An expected woman then walks right through the camouflage, and we recognize her to be Edelweiss the Twin Wings. Mr. Prime Minister was shocked she's so interested in the finals, though he's reminded she fought Ikki herself once before. Edelweiss also can't believe Oma and Amane were defeated so easily, and she states a third party from America has come to observe as well. The twins were already defeated, and Momiji just summoned a wall of flames, but Ikki effortlessly slices right through it. Her brain jumps to using Trackless Step, however she realizes he has no blind spots to hide within. At that moment, Ikki vanishes into Trackless Step, cuts Momiji down, and thanks her for the match. Panzer Grizzly launches a surprise attack from behind. Taking the massive punch head on, Ikki redistributes the force into the ground. Kaga attempts to retreat. Ikki forces him off balance before bringing this duel to a swift end. His little sister is furious, but Ikki thanks him all the same. The next opponent then steps forward, instantly sending a shiver down Ikki's spine. Match begins with a barrage of long-distance lightning attacks, which Ikki successfully dodges. You see, Ikki's movement technique, which he stole from Edelweiss, gives him large bursts of speed, but makes it difficult to change directions. Thus, if used repeatedly, he will quickly tire out. Due to this, Ikki charges straight ahead, narrowly sliding under the lightning. Their blades clash in a flurry of blows, as Ikki thinks about how she can't use Raikiri if she doesn't have time to sheath her sword. Knocking her blade to the side, he spots an opening, but his sixth sense gives him just enough time to defend an unnaturally quick recovery. A jolt of lightning short-circuits his body, but he manually restarts his nervous system just in time to dodge. He realizes she's learned how to generate a magnetic field, which can instantly speed up or slow down her sword. While retreating, he trips over the crack left behind by Kaga. Ikki narrowly blocks, but another lightning bolt surges through his body. Without delay, she stows her blade to use Raikiri, only to find a rock jammed inside the scabbard. As it turns out, Ikki's fake trip was all part of his plan. The Phantom Form attack drops Toka to her knee, and Ikki thanks her just like the others. Moribashi exclaims that was an interesting victory, and promises not to use Tiger Bite since the finals is later today. An unbelievable pressure radiates from the former king. However, Ikki's well aware this is nothing compared to Stella. Charging forward, he deflects numerous spear thrusts, but is unable to break through. Switching tactics, Worst One produces multiple after images, though the spear stays locked on to the real Ikki. Next, he tries using his sixth secret sword to send a shockwave through his opponent, but Moribashi notices something is amiss and doesn't fall for it. Accepting that tricks won't work, Ikki focuses, calmly walking forward, as now it's Moribashi's turn to feel an immense pressure. Their weapons collide once again, however Ikki stands strong, narrowly defending while slowly advancing. A few attacks graze his opponent, yet Moribashi is the one being driven into a corner. Beginning to panic, Moribashi makes a mistake. Ikki gladly takes a spear to his shoulder, giving him the opportunity to land a lethal blow. Collapsing to the floor, the former king is very disappointed, though Ikki admits he only lost due to not being able to use his trump card. With the sparring at an end, Ikki thanks the group for coming, and is told to pay them back by defeating Stella. He promises to give it his best shot, though he's told that attitude isn't good enough. No matter what, he needs to be confident when stepping into that ring, even if that involves lying to himself. Moribashi promises to support him the entire way. Ikki asks for another rematch, but suddenly the doors open, as the Sword Emperor of Wind, Oma Kuragane, steps inside. Ikki didn't think he'd actually show up, prompting Oma to state it's an older brother's job to smack the weakness out of his little bro. Of course, Oma's presence alone causes a cold sweat to break out, but once again, Ikki's aware Stella is even greater. After images are created, Oma slashes at an illusion before slamming his shoulder into flesh. Wasting no time, Oma follows up with the Kuragane secret combo, consisting of 108 precisely calculated slashes. Toka can tell he's planning something. After the 57th slice, he uses his 7th secret sword to parry, followed by his 6th secret sword sending a shockwave through Oma's body. Though the Sword Emperor is unfazed, knocking away the F-rank knight a second time. With a wind blade aimed directly at him, Ikki charges straight ahead at maximum speed, though on the opposite side he finds Oma readying his strongest and fastest technique. Driving his sword into the ground, Ikki pole vaults himself into the air, kicks off the ceiling, allowing Entetsu to pierce Oma's magical defense, but is stopped by his steel-like body. Pile driving his little brother into the ground, Oma's heavy blade aims to end this. As a last-ditch effort, Entetsu is poised to block. Oma is blasted backward across the ring. The spectators are all confused, as Oma asks if Ikki is satisfied using stolen techniques. Our F-rank knight declares he's not here to be the most powerful, he's here to be the victor. Then with his blade consumed by a tornado, the Sword Emperor orders his little bro to prove he's capable of overcoming fate. Elsewhere, Stella wakes up and inspects her carefully honed body, determining it to be in peak condition. With eagerness in her heart, she looks forward to the finals, confident that she'll learn even more about herself upon that stage. Ikki opens with after images, but a stomp knocks him off balance as cracks flow through the entire stadium. A single powerful slash launches him across the ring, essentially confirming his fear that a single strike is enough to kill him. The Crimson Princess compliments his opening, but the worst one explains it went just as expected. Utakata can't believe she cracked the entire stadium. Granted, she is known as the most powerful. Kanata urges them not to underestimate Kuragane, as she and Toka both noticed how Ikki skillfully dislocated his own shoulder as a means to absorb that strike. Stella then chooses to test her opponent as she unleashes
Bahamut Howl.
We have knights to protect the crowd, but Kuragane has nowhere to hide.
By dashing through at top speed, he can minimize the time spent within the heat wave.
Entetsu sinks deep into Stella's chest. The illusion vanishes as the Crimson Princess appears behind Ikki. She recognizes that he's unusually calm for the situation, but chooses to trust in her overwhelming power anyway. Readying his third secret sword, a boom rocks the stadium as Stella is the one forced away. Without hesitation, she declares that technique to be her own, as he redirected her attack back at her. Any slight error would have been catastrophic to his body, but this is what he trained so hard for. Declaring he's no longer afraid, he charges straight ahead as a seven-headed dragon bears down on him. With a burst of speed, he evades, prompting Stella to cloak herself in Empress dress. Skillfully parrying her blade upward, Ikki delivers 3 clean stabs to her body. However, her magic halts them at mere scratches. Now realizing this armor is hindering more than helping, she drops it, just as Ikki leans in with a powerful slash drawing blood.
It's unbelievable that this match would be so one-sided.
The fact they know each other so well is allowing Ikki to predict her every move.
Indeed, but she's still yet to deploy her trump card, Dragon Spirit.
But he's purposely laying on the pressure not to give Stella time to activate it.
Alice points out that Ikki's attacks are barely doing any damage, though Shizuku reminds them his trump card can easily break through. Moribashi, however, can't help but feeling like something is off. In a box seat, the chairman says the same, as he believes Ikki is gradually losing control of the match. Kuragane has passed up 7 different chances to win, which Edelweiss explains is due to him being scared. Ikki also recognizes this isn't like him, but every time he sees an opening, it's as if he's staring into the mouth of a dragon. The Crimson Princess eventually stops defending altogether as she bursts into a fit of laughter. She wonders why Ikki hasn't capitalized on any of the opportunities she gave him, but opportunities isn't what Ikki would call them. Giving up on her trap, the Crimson Princess's chest splits open, releasing her trump card.
Dragon Spirit.
Shizuku is confused since she didn't stab herself to activate it, but Byakuya instantly explains that was nothing more than a grandiose performance and an elaborate trap for Ikki. Our F-rank knight thought everything was proceeding a little too smoothly, followed by Stella leisurely swinging her sword, pushing him away. Forcing himself to calm down, Ikki remembers the thousands of battle simulations he ran through his mind. This is all within calculation, and yes, his opponent has grown stronger, but she's still the same girl, meaning he can still predict her every move. Prepared to counter, Ikki dodges at the last second, realizing that would have killed him, as she's significantly more powerful than he could have ever imagined. Stella presses her overwhelming advantage. Ikki fakes a stumble, successfully luring her into a power attack. Fully prepared to counter, Ikki dodges at the last second as a crack bisects the stadium. The fact she respects him enough to go all out leaves Ikki absolutely terrified, as he can't see any outcome besides his own demise. Shizuku is concerned that Stella's just too strong, but Moribashi says it's something else entirely. Due to her magic, Toka is able to read people's electrical pulses, and she confirms that Ikki is being driven by genuine fear. Recognizing his pitiful behavior, the Crimson Princess slams her sword into the arena to end this. With an influx of heat, the ground liquefies into magma, leaving only a few slowly melting rocks in place. Left totally speechless, Ikki realizes how ignorant he was to believe he ever had a chance. Another stomp drops him to a knee, followed by the dragon closing in. Rolling under her swing, he stabs her in the back. Flame Veil disappears, as he barely raises Entetsu in time. Shizuku screams, "Don't block!" as a burning fist shatters his ribs. Barely able to stand, Ikki vomits boiling blood, followed by his consciousness slipping away. Stella calmly delivers the finishing blow, splattering the ground with even more boiling blood. Except it was her own this time, as Ikki's unconscious body countered. Literally holding in her organs, Stella backs away to heal, giving Ikki a moment to wake up and realize what just happened. Our F rank has trained so hard and suffered so much that his body refuses to give up. On top of that, his friends all have faith in his victory, so why shouldn't he believe in himself as well? Confidently stepping forward, Ikki's body begins radiating blue, confirming Itoshira's activation. The Crimson Princess isn't giving him an opening, so what's the point in holding back any longer? With a shout, he calls out to his opponent, who returns a large smile, recognizing the real battle is about to begin. Red collides with Blue, as they're each aware the first person to retreat will surely be the loser. Actively evolving with every strike, they each refuse to allow their lover to pull ahead. Shizuku watches in awe and appreciation, as she knows only Stella could push her brother to this height. Edelweiss, however, looks on with sadness, as she knows this contest is headed toward a very cruel end. After many more clashes, Ikki suddenly backs away, feeling as though chains are ensnaring his body. Shizuku screams. A confused Alice states Itoshira hasn't ended yet, followed by Moribashi explaining that's not the issue. You see, it's not that Ikki has slowed down, he's just no longer able to keep up with his opponent. Sarah asks for an explanation, so Edelweiss proclaims that every single Blazer has a set maximum potential upon birth, and that F-rank worst one just reached his peak, though the A-rank Crimson Princess still has much room to grow. Stella uses the same slash punch combo as before. Ikki successfully blocks, but is lifted into the air. Unable to dodge, he takes Catheterio Salamandra head on, which buries him in a pile of rubble just outside the ring.
The referee has begun the ring-out timer, but shouldn't they be prioritizing medical rescue instead?
Well, that wasn't exactly a direct hit since Stella sacrificed power in exchange for speed.
So you're saying there's a chance Kurigane can still win?
Unfortunately not. Itoshira has just reached its time limit.
And a horrified little sister laments that her brother has done enough. Underneath the rubble, Ikki recognizes this to be the limit assigned to him by fate. Honestly, he gave it his all, and as such should be satisfied, yet he continues to drag his bleeding body forward, all for the woman he loves. I mean, if he can't be her rival, then she will eventually find another, and Ikki Kurigane selfishly wants to keep all of Stella Vermilion to himself. The count reaches 9. The rubble is sliced apart as a dash of blue re-enters the ring.
What just happened? Kurigane's magic is stronger than before.
I have no idea. I thought it was impossible to increase one's magical power.
Her opponent declares he won't lose, causing Stella to state she'll overcome fate just like him. With a monstrous roar, Stella unleashes the depths of her magic, which much like a star begins pulling in and vaporizing the surrounding debris. This is likely going to be their final duel, and she reassures Ikki that even if he dies, she will love only him forever. It's obvious her magic will instantly vaporize Entetsu, so guess he'll just have to attack faster than it can vaporize. Feeling his body magically metabolize the last of his energy reserves, Ikki sinks low into a quick draw stance, waiting for the moment to unleash Ito Resetsu. Stella understands his intent and chooses to face it head on, especially since her sword is longer and as such will strike first. After passing by, the world fades to white, as Stella remembers Ikki moving faster than his shadow could keep up with.
Kurigane, the crownless sword king, is the victor!
I'm not even going to try and comprehend what just happened.
Rinrin says it was too fast for her to see, followed by Toka explaining the quick draw technique. But how did Ikki overcome Stella's longer reach? As their eyes are directed at Entetsu's melted hilt, which Ikki used to knock her sword away before striking. Using her sword as a crutch, Stella tries to close her wound, but is completely out of magic. You see, Dragon Spirit is extremely powerful, but it does consume an equally extreme amount of energy. As her device shatters, the Crimson Princess stumbles forward, delivering one last feeble punch to her opponent, before muttering she won't lose next time. Thus Stella collapses to the ground, but instead Ikki catches her fall, declaring he'll win again next time as well. The crowd goes wild, except for the completely serious Shizuku. Vaulting over the railing, she freezes the magma. Ikki suddenly collapses, as she screams for the medics. Edelweiss is in awe that Kurigane achieved soul awakening at such a young age. This means fate no longer controls him, and that he wields power capable of rewriting the world, but also that he's entering into a realm of demons. Though Ikki and Stella just might have the power to overcome the horrible future Director Tsukikage foresaw. Granted, the other desperados witnessed this as well. Now that Ikki is awake, they congratulate him on winning, and promise to come back first thing in the morning. Hearing his name being mumbled, Ikki walks to his beloved's bedside. While caressing her cheek, his heart rate increases, causing him to lean in for a kiss. Snapping awake, he takes a knee to the chest, followed by a just as fast apology. Next, she realizes where she's at, causing her to remember the defeat. Ikki offers to give her some time alone, but she declines, exclaiming she'll use this regret to grow even stronger. That right there is part of the reason he adores her so much, and she admits to always wanting Ikki to be her number one. The Crimson Princess thus finds her back to the bed, and we're going to fade to black for the next 10% of the book. The answer to what happened is yes. The following morning, our couple wakes up, more exhausted than they were the night before. The ground is littered with plastic wrappers as they lean in for a good morning kiss. A knock at the door sends them into a frenzy, and Ikki scurries back to his bed as Stella hides the trash under her covers. Their intruders greet them as Alice immediately notices what must have went down. It's proclaimed they must have had fun last night. Stella panics denying it, but Alice remembers them smiling during the match. Changing topics, Ikki thanks his sister for waking them and asks for a moment to get dressed. Of course, Shizuku agrees to step outside, but first wants to know what that balloon-looking thing is on the floor. Instinctively reaching to hide it, Stella finds nothing there. Our Crimson Princess goes pale, Lorelei is fuming, and screams they've been dragon-fanging his Ito Shura. Stella suggests they discuss this later. Shizuku asks for any last words, followed by the room being engulfed in magic. Later on, Stella shouts that anyone but her could have died from that assault, and reveals that she's still scared of how Shizuku will act later. Ikki promises to talk with his sister, but Stella feels the need to settle this dispute herself. In turn, Ikki should focus on preparing to meet her father. She's already booked a flight for them next week. Whoa, he's not mentally prepared yet, and Stella graciously agrees to delay it another week, if he's willing to risk an international war. Now normally, the third place winners would be here alongside them, but Oma already left the city and Amane was disqualified. So the worst one, and the Crimson Princess, walk forth into the arena hand in hand. The crowd cheers for the second place winner, but goes completely silent upon Ikki being named the 7-star Sword King. Kurono then hands him their school flag. He thrusts it into the air, as the entire town shakes with applause. With that, the festival comes to a close, but suddenly multiple clones of a girl jump into the ring. Each time security catches one, it vanishes into smoke, as the real culprit arrives in front of our couple. Kusakabe then pulls out a camera, telling Ikki and Stella to scoot closer together on the podium.
I just wanted to give a personal thank you for watching this series. Chivalry of a Failed Knight is one of my favorites, and it kinda saddens me that it didn't take off, but I fully understand why it didn't. Due to that, this is going to be the last video that I make on it. If you're interested, there is more books. They are kind of hard to find the translations for, but they are out there. If you haven't already, be sure to check out some of the other videos I make covering that time I got reincarnated as a slime, or I'm about to be working on ReZero if you're interested in that.